Dear listeners, I welcome you to my channel. Leave your comments and impressions, I value your opinion. I never imagined myself as the type to plot revenge, let alone concoct a scheme as elaborate as the one I found myself orchestrating on a cool Thursday evening in May. But then, I had never imagined my husband, Mark, capable of betraying me either. Life has a way of surprising you, pushing you into corners you never thought you'd inhabit. My target was Tony, a smooth-talking sales rep from Mark's company. From what I had gathered, Tony wasn't just a hapless pawn in Mark's adulterous games, he was an eager participant. He had charm, a quick smile, and an even quicker line of excuses. He was perfect for Mark's deceptions, and unfortunately for him, perfect for my plans as well. The bar was dimly lit and throbbing with the pulse of late-night escapades. I sat at a corner table, dressed in a black dress that was classy yet suggestive, a calculated choice. My phone buzzed. It was Tony, confirming he was on his way. I replied with a simple smiley face, my stomach churning not with nerves but a cold, resolute anger. Tony arrived, flashing his trademark grin, which faltered slightly when he saw the expression on my face. "Hey, beautiful. Waiting long?" he'd asked, sliding into the seat across from me. "Not too long," I said, my voice steady, but long enough to think about what I wanted to say. His brow furrowed in confusion. "Oh, and what's that?" "I know about you and my husband, Tony." The color drained from his face. "Look, I raised my hand, silencing him. "Save it. I'm not here to listen to your excuses. I'm here to make you an offer." He swallowed, looking around nervously. "What kind of offer?" "One that ensures we both get what we want. You walk away without a scandal, and I get my revenge." Tony leaned back, eyeing me warily. "And what do you need from me?" "Just a few favors, and your complete cooperation." He nodded slowly, processing the gravity of his situation. "And if I refuse?" The threat hung unspoken between us. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Let's just say, refusal isn't in your best interests." He rubbed his jaw, the cockiness now wiped clean off his face. "I'm not to blame, you know. Your wife. She made me sleep with her. She said if I refused, she would put me behind bars." I scoffed. "And you believed her?" "My husband is a lot of things, Tony, but he's not the police." Tony looked down, defeated. "What do you want me to do?" I slid a piece of paper across the table with instructions and a phone number. "Call this number tomorrow at 9 sharp. They'll tell you what to do next. Remember, Tony, I'm not the only one watching now." He picked up the paper, his hand trembling slightly. "And if I do this, it ends, right? You'll let it go?" I stood up, smoothing my dress. "Do it right, and yes, I'll let go. But cross me, and you'll wish you had never met either of us." As I walked away, the weight of my actions pressed down on me, but there was no turning back now. The game had begun, and I was playing for keeps. The morning after my confrontation with Tony was unusually crisp, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within me. I was seated in a quaint cafe downtown, a nondescript location chosen for its privacy and the unlikely chance of running into anyone I knew. The person I was waiting for was integral to my plan. Someone who could tip the scales in my favor, or completely demolish them if I wasn't careful. As the clock ticked closer to 10:30, she walked in. Lisa, Mark's executive assistant, was sharp, both in intellect and appearance. Her role in his office gave her access to secrets even I wasn't privy to as his wife. Our eyes met, and she approached with a cautious smile. "Lena," she greeted, her voice tinged with a professional warmth as she sat down. "I got your message." I must admit, I was surprised. I offered a tight smile, diving straight in. "I'll get to the point, Lisa. I know about Mark and his activities. I also know you've been covering for him." Her expression remained unreadable, but her eyes flickered with something akin to respect. "I do what my job requires," she replied, maintaining her composure. "And what if your job required something else? Something that could benefit us both?" I leaned forward, gauging her reaction. She paused, her fingers drumming lightly on the table. "I'm listening." "I want details, Lisa. Movements, meetings, anything and everything that can help me understand just how deep this goes. And in return? Protection. A reference for any job you want after this is over. I'll make sure you land on your feet." She considered this, her analytical mind turning over the possibilities. Finally she nodded. "I can provide what you need." But I expect you to keep your word, Lana. You have it, I assured her, feeling the first thread of an alliance being woven. Our meeting concluded with an exchange of numbers and a promise to stay in touch. As I left the cafe, my phone buzzed. It was Tony. Done. Read the message. I felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with apprehension. Step 1 was complete. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation and planning. By evening, I was ready for the next phase. I drove to a small, nondescript office building on the outskirts of town, where I was meeting the final piece of my puzzle. Derek, a private investigator known for his discretion and effectiveness. Derek was waiting in his office, a room filled with monitors and files that spoke of countless other secrets. Mrs. Cross, he greeted, rising from his desk. Call me Lana, I said, extending a hand. Thanks for meeting on such short notice. Not a problem. I understand you're looking for thorough surveillance. He was direct, a trait I appreciated. Yes, on 2 individuals. My husband, Mark, and his associate Tony. I need to know everything. Derek nodded, already making notes. I can set up video and audio surveillance, track movements, the lot. It'll take a couple of days to get everything in place. That's fine, I said. I need everything to be perfect. As I drove home later that night, the reality of what I was doing began to truly sink in. My life, once defined by trust and partnership, was now a chessboard of spies and tactics, but there was no room for doubt. I had to see this through, not just for the sake of revenge, but for my own sanity. Back home, I poured myself a glass of wine, the liquid ruby red and shimmering under the kitchen lights. Tomorrow would bring more movement, more secrets unveiled. And I was ready. Whatever it took, I was ready. The sun had barely crested the horizon when my phone vibrated against the nightstand, piercing the silence of the early morning. I grabbed it, squinting against the bright screen. It was a message from Derek, the private investigator. Setup complete. Check your email. I swung my legs off the bed and padded over to my laptop. The night had been restless, filled with dreams tinted by deceit and whispers of betrayal. Now, as I opened my email, I braced myself for the reality of what I might see. The first batch of surveillance photos and audio clips were attached. Heart pounding, I clicked through them. Images of Mark and Tony meeting in secretive murmurs. Their faces tight with conspiratorial urgency flooded my screen. I paused on a clip labeled Audio, Important. With a deep breath, I played it. Mark's voice filled the room, laced with an earnestness I hadn't heard in months. We need to move faster, Tony. She's getting suspicious. Tony's reply came, tinged with anxiety. I'm telling you, it's getting risky. Lana's not stupid. She's onto us. My hands trembled. They knew I was close, but not close enough yet. I needed more, something concrete to break them entirely. As the day unfolded, I met with Lisa for a quick coffee. The cafe was bustling, masking our conversation. I've sent you everything from this week, she said, sliding a USB discreetly across the table. Emails, calendar invites, the works. He's planning something big this weekend. Good work, I replied, pocketing the USB. Keep me posted. Leaving the cafe, I felt the weight of the tiny device in my pocket. This was more than just digital data. It was ammunition. Back at home, I reviewed the contents of the USB. Among the mundane messages about meetings and deadlines, a series of emails between Mark and an unknown account stood out. They spoke of a meeting, one that would finalize whatever nefarious deal they were plotting. It was scheduled for tomorrow night at an upscale downtown gallery. That evening, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending confrontation. I called Derek. There's a meeting tomorrow night. I want eyes and ears on it. It's crucial. Consider it done, he assured me. The next day, as twilight dipped the city in shades of gray, I found myself parked across the street from the gallery, my nerves taut. Derek had wired me up with an earpiece, allowing me to listen in on the meeting from my car. The voices of Mark and an unfamiliar man discussing terms filtered through. Once this deal goes through, we'll be untouchable, Mark said, his voice greedy with anticipation. I clenched my fists, anger simmering. But it was the next piece that chilled my blood. The man replied, and the money laundering? Will your wife suspect? Mark's laugh was cold, dismissive. Lana. She has no idea about any of this. By the time she does, it'll be too late. Fury and betrayal clashed within me, but I forced myself to stay focused. I now had everything I needed: proof of his criminal activities and betrayal. As they exited the gallery, laughing, I started the engine. It was time for the next move. No more watching, no more waiting. Mark and his accomplice had just walked into their own trap, and I was about to spring it. "Derek," I said into the microphone, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Gather all the evidence. It's time to take this to the authorities." The game was over, and I was ready to claim victory, not just for myself, but for every silent moment I had spent in the shadows of my husband's lies. The day after the gallery incident, I woke up with a mix of anticipation and dread. I had always imagined how this moment would feel, but now that it was here, the weight of what I was about to do was sobering. The plan was in place, and all that remained was to execute it. But that morning, I felt a sense of finality that had previously eluded me. Derek had come through, compiling the evidence into a formidable package for law enforcement. I was standing at the threshold of my home, staring at a manila envelope that seemed so ordinary, yet held the power to bring down Mark and his shadowy world. I dialed Lisa. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, my voice hesitant. Despite everything, a small part of me still wanted to believe that Mark wasn't beyond redemption. "You can't go back now, Lana," she replied, her tone firm but compassionate. "This is the only way forward." Taking her words to heart, I drove to the police station, feeling each mile stretch into an eternity. When I arrived, an officer directed me to a detective who specialized in financial crimes. His office was unremarkable, yet the gravity of what I was about to do made it feel like a courtroom. Detective Michaels listened as I outlined the case, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "This is quite a revelation, Mrs. Cross," he said, leaning back in his chair. "We'll need to verify the information, but from what you've provided, this looks like a solid case." I handed him the envelope, feeling an odd mix of relief and sorrow. As I left the station, my mind was racing, torn between the need for justice and the fear of what lay ahead. That evening, I returned home, my nerves frayed, but my resolve stronger than ever. I was expecting the call. Mark's number lit up my phone, and I answered, my voice steady. "Yes." "Lana, what have you done?" Mark's voice was frantic. "The police are at the office. They've frozen my accounts." "What did you do?" I remained silent, the weight of his realization pressing down on him through the line. "You have no one to blame but yourself," I finally said, my voice cold. A long pause ensued before he spoke again, his voice breaking. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I was protecting us." "You were protecting yourself," I corrected him, my voice hardening. "Now you have to face the consequences." As I hung up, the doorbell rang. Startled, I opened it to find Tony standing there, his face ashen. "You set me up," he accused, his voice trembling. "I gave you a choice," I countered, crossing my arms. "You made yours." "You don't understand," Tony pleaded, stepping closer. "She, your husband, threatened me. If I didn't help him, he would have ruined my life." My brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "I thought you were talking about Mark." Tony shook his head, his eyes desperate. "No, not Mark. Lisa. She orchestrated the whole thing." Suddenly, everything clicked into place. Lisa's sudden willingness to help, her access to all the critical information, it had all been too easy. "Why would she do this?" I asked, feeling the ground shift beneath me. "Because she's been running her own operation from inside Mark's company," Tony revealed. "She used you to take down her competition." My mind reeled. All this time, I had been a pawn in Lisa's game. As Tony turned to leave, a black SUV screeched to a halt outside my house. Lisa emerged, flanked by two imposing men. "Lana, darling," she greeted, her smile cold. "I knew you'd figure it out, but too late, I'm afraid." Before I could react, the men moved forward, and I realized Lisa was here to eliminate the final threat: me. In the chaos that followed, Tony grabbed my hand, and we ran toward my car. As we drove away, the adrenaline pumping through my veins, I realized that this battle was far from over. Mark may have been the original enemy, but the true puppet master was someone I had trusted. In the end, the real surprise was not Mark's betrayal, but the enemy within, and as Tony and I raced toward the unknown, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of a new fight, and this time, I would not be caught off guard.